It was a rainy night, and the clock was striking almost midnight when the automatic doors of the hospital slowly opened, revealing the silhouette of a man bent by life. His figure was thin, his disheveled hair and unshaven beard giving him an air of neglect. His clothes, old and torn, were soaked by the relentless rain. He entered the brightly lit lobby, his tired eyes scanning the surroundings with a mix of hope and despair. The receptionist, used to seeing everything, hesitated for a moment. The man's almost pleading eyes met hers, but the hospital's rules were clear: no ID or insurance, no treatment. However, he didn't ask for anything. He just headed to one of the benches in the waiting area and sat down, panting. The few patients present cast curious and suspicious glances in his direction, but soon returned to their own concerns. Dr. Clara, a young doctor known for her competence and empathy, was finishing her shift when she saw the man. Something about his fragile posture and lost look caught her attention. She felt an uncontrollable urge to help, something that always guided her in her vocation. Approaching slowly, Clara noticed that he was trembling, not just from the cold, but perhaps from something deeper. A hidden pain that couldn't be diagnosed with a simple examination. "Good evening," she said softly, trying not to startle him. "My name is Clara. Can I help you with something?" The man looked up, and for a moment Clara saw in his eyes an untold story of suffering and resilience. He opened his mouth to respond, but his voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "I don't feel well." Without asking further questions, Clara decided she couldn't ignore his plea for help, even knowing it could have consequences. Ignoring the rules, she called for a wheelchair and helped him into it. As she wheeled him towards an examination room, the receptionist's intrigued gaze followed her movements, aware that something extraordinary was about to happen. Inside the room, under the cold light of the exam lamps, Clara began to examine the man who passed out from exhaustion. His heart was beating irregularly, and his vital signs were weak. The situation was serious, but Clara knew he was now in good hands. As she worked, a sense of unease filled her, an intuition that this night would change not only the man's life but her own as well. As Dr. Clara worked frantically to stabilize the man, the hospital corridors were more bustling than usual. News that a doctor was treating a patient without identification started to spread like a restless whisper, growing louder and more intense as it reached the ears of the higher-ups. A tense atmosphere settled in as the hospital's ethics and rules clashed in the midst of that stormy night. In the examination room, Clara was focused on her work. Her mind was a whirlwind of medical protocols, but her heart beat with the firm conviction that she was doing the right thing. Little did she know that on the other side of the walls, the hospital administration was already taking drastic measures. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the corridor, and suddenly the door to the examination room opened with a dull thud. The head of the medical team, Dr. Marcos, a man known for his rigidity and adherence to rules, entered with a stern expression. His eyes conveyed a mix of anger and disapproval. "Dr. Clara, we need to talk immediately," he ordered, his voice cutting through the air like a sharp blade. Clara looked up for a moment, still holding the hand of the unconscious patient. "Dr. Marcos, I'm in the middle of a critical procedure. This man needs urgent care." "This hospital has clear rules, Dr. Clara," he replied, not budging an inch. "And one of them is not to treat patients without identification or insurance. You know this as well as I do." Clara felt a chill down her spine but maintained her stance. "I understand the rules, Dr. Marcos, but I can't turn my back on someone in need. He's in critical condition. As doctors, our oath is to save lives above any bureaucracy." Dr. Marcos's expression hardened even more. "You know the consequences of this, don't you? You're disobeying a direct order, putting your career and the hospital's reputation at risk." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. "If it means I'm doing what's right, then I'm willing to accept the consequences." Dr. Marcos observed her for a long moment, his gaze impenetrable. Finally, he shook his head and left the room, leaving Clara with a sense that the night wouldn't end well for her. As she continued her work, the waiting room was filled with murmurs. Nurses and other doctors whispered among themselves, some admiring Clara's courage, others condemning her recklessness. But deep down, everyone knew that this situation was a reflection of the tensions between humanity and the bureaucracy that permeates their daily lives. Clara knew that by making that decision, she had crossed an invisible line. What she didn't know was how deep the repercussions would be, and how that simple act of kindness would unfold into events that would change everything. The tension in the examination room was palpable, almost tangible. Clara knew she was in dangerous territory, but her determination was unwavering. The man before her, still unconscious, was more than just a patient without a name or known past. He was a life that needed saving. With each beat of her heart, Clara felt the urgency of her choice. She turned her attention to the vital signs monitor. The man's condition was critical, and every second counted. As she adjusted the IV and checked the parameters, her mind was divided between the present and the potential repercussions of her actions. The decision to proceed despite explicit orders weighed on her, but not as much as the burden of abandoning someone in need. Outside, the news of her disobedience spread quickly through the hospital corridors. Her colleagues whispered among themselves, some admiring her courage, others predicting inevitable consequences. Among them was Anna, a nurse who had always been a loyal friend. With quick steps, Anna entered the room, her eyes expressing concern and support. "Clara, do you know what you're doing?" Anna asked, her voice filled with apprehension. Clara, without taking her eyes off her patient, responded firmly, "Yes, Anna, he needs help, and I can't just ignore that, not when I can make a difference." Anna nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We're with you, Clara, but Dr. Marcos has already informed the administration. They won't let this slide." Clara took a deep breath, feeling the pressure mounting. "I know, but I can't let the fear of consequences stop me from doing what's right. If I lose my job to save a life, then it's a price I'm willing to pay." With one last supportive look, Anna left the room, leaving Clara alone again with her thoughts and her patient. The decision was made. Clara knew she was risking everything, her career, her livelihood, her future at the hospital, but none of that mattered compared to the life she was trying to save. As she worked, Clara couldn't help but reflect on her motivations. She remembered why she chose to become a doctor, the belief that every life is valuable, every person deserves a chance, regardless of their circumstances. And at that moment, her convictions were being tested like never before. Hours passed and the night moved slowly. Clara fought against her fatigue, her mind focused on every detail of the treatment. Finally, the man began to show signs of improvement, his pulse stabilizing, his breathing becoming more regular. A wave of relief washed over Clara, but she knew the real battle was still ahead. She looked at the man, now in a more stable condition, and felt a wave of emotions. It wasn't just professional satisfaction. It was something deeper, a reaffirmation of her beliefs and values. That night, Clara had made a decision that would change her life forever. And although she didn't know what the future held, she was at peace with her choice. The door opened again, and this time it was a member of the hospital administration. The stern look on his face left no doubt about what was coming next. But Clara, with a firm heart and a clear conscience, was ready to face the consequences of her courage, knowing she had done the right thing. In the soft dimness of the examination room, the constant sound of life support machines formed a soundtrack of hope and determination. Clara moved with an almost poetic precision, each gesture filled with compassion and care. The man before her, still unconscious, was beginning to show signs of recovery. But the path to stability was long and uncertain. Clara knew she was challenging more than just rules. She was challenging a system that often seemed to forget humanity amidst the bureaucracy. Each act of care, each adjustment of the IV or monitor, was a silent declaration of resistance and empathy. She monitored the man's vital signs, adjusted his medications, and checked his infusions, her eyes alert to any change. As she worked, Clara spoke to him, her soft and comforting voice filling the silence. "You're safe now. We're taking care of you. Keep fighting," she murmured, not knowing if he could hear her but believing that her words might reach some part of him, even in unconsciousness. Hours passed and the night deepened. Clara never left the patient's side, not for a moment. Her dedication was a fine line between exhaustion and determination. Anna, the nurse, came in several times to offer help and moral support, bringing coffee and words of encouragement. Together, they formed a team united by the common purpose of saving a life. Anna watched Clara with growing admiration. "You're amazing, you know," she said during a moment of calm. "I don't know how many would do what you're doing." Clara smiled, though her eyes showed signs of fatigue. "I'm not amazing, Anna. I'm just doing what any of us should do. We can't lose our humanity amidst so many rules and protocols." In the early hours of the morning, the hospital felt like a world apart. The fluorescent lights cast soft shadows, and the distant sound of footsteps and voices echoed through the corridors. But inside that room, Clara and Anna were engaged in a greater mission. They knew that regardless of the consequences, they were doing something important, something that truly mattered. Finally, after hours of intensive care, the man began to respond to the treatment. His eyes slowly opened, and he tried to speak, but his voice was weak and hoarse. Clara leaned in close, holding his hand. "You're in the hospital. You're safe now. We're taking care of you." The man blinked, his eyes full of gratitude and confusion. He tried to smile, but was clearly exhausted. Clara felt a wave of relief, knowing he was finally out of immediate danger. She looked at Anna, who returned her a tired but triumphant smile. "We did it," Anna whispered. "He's going to be okay." Clara nodded, feeling tears of relief well up in her eyes. But she knew the battle wasn't entirely won. There was still much to be done, both for the man's recovery and to face the repercussions of her actions. But in that moment, Clara allowed herself a brief instant of peace, knowing she had made a difference. That night, Clara not only saved a life, she reaffirmed her belief in the power of compassionate care, the importance of seeing beyond appearances and rules. And as the man fell asleep again, more stable and secure, Clara felt renewed in her vocation, ready to face any challenge the future might bring. The first rays of sunlight were beginning to illuminate the hospital, when the tranquility of the early morning was interrupted by a growing commotion. The news of Dr. Clara's boldness had reached everyone's ears, and the repercussions were just beginning. Clara, exhausted but satisfied with the patient's improvement, stepped out of the examination room for a quick break. She had barely crossed the corridor when she was summoned to the administration office. With a heavy heart, she knew the moment to face the consequences of her decision had arrived. Text in the office, the air was thick with tension. Dr. Marcos was present, along with several members of the upper administration. The hospital director, a man with a severe expression and a critical gaze, was seated at the main desk. He looked at her with a mix of disapproval and curiosity. "Dr. Clara," the director began, his voice cold and controlled, "we have received reports that you disobeyed a direct order and treated a patient without identification. This is a serious violation of hospital policies." Clara took a deep breath, remaining calm. "Yes, sir. I treated a critically ill patient who urgently needed medical care. I couldn't, in good conscience, ignore that." The director exchanged glances with Dr. Marcos before continuing. "Rules exist for a reason. You have put your career and this hospital's reputation at risk. You need to understand the gravity of your actions." Before Clara could respond, the door opened and a nurse hurried in, handing an envelope to the director. He opened it, and as he read the contents, his expression changed from severe to something more confused and perplexed. "This patient you treated," he began, now with a different tone, "has been identified. He is quite influential." Clara frowned, confused. "Influential? How so?" The director sighed, passing the paper to Dr. Marcos, who read it quickly, his eyes widening. "This man is Ricardo Albuquerque, a multimillionaire businessman. He disappeared days ago and his family was desperate to find him." Clara felt a shock course through her body. The man she had treated, who seemed to be just another victim of life's harsh circumstances, was actually someone of immense importance and resources. "He was found without documents, without anything to identify him," the director explained. "Apparently, he had an accident and lost everything he was carrying. No one knew where he was until now." The room fell into a tense silence as everyone processed the information. What had seemed like an act of disobedience now had a new perspective. Clara had saved a life that turned out to be of immense influence and power. The director looked at Clara with a complex expression. "Dr. Clara, your action, though against the rules, saved an important man. The consequences for the hospital could have been disastrous if he hadn't received care. However, we cannot ignore the violation of policies. Clara nodded, understanding the delicacy of the situation. I am aware, sir. I did what I thought was right, regardless of the rules. Dr. Marcos, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. We must consider the exceptional circumstances of this case. Perhaps a more balanced approach is necessary. The director reflected for a moment before agreeing. I concur. Dr. Clara, you will be temporarily suspended while we investigate all the implications of this incident. But know that your courage and dedication have not gone unnoticed. Clara left the office feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The discovery of the patient's true identity had changed everything, and the repercussions were just beginning to unfold. She knew that her decision, driven by compassion and duty, had created ripples far beyond the walls of that hospital. Clara walked through the hospital corridors with a heavy heart. The temporary suspension left her in limbo, anxiously awaiting the final verdict. The whispers and looks from her colleagues followed her every step, some admiring, others critical. She knew she had done the right thing, but the uncertainty of the future was still a heavy burden. Days passed, and the news about Ricardo Albuquerque, the multimillionaire saved by Clara, became headlines in the newspapers. The media was in a frenzy, praising the young doctor's courage to defy the rules to save a life. However, inside the hospital, the situation was quite different. Finally, the day of the decisive meeting arrived. Clara was summoned to the administration office where she found the director, Dr. Marcos, and other board members. The atmosphere was formal, and the tension was palpable. Dr. Clara, the director began, adjusting his glasses as he read some documents. We have carefully reviewed your conduct and the exceptional circumstances of this case. There is no doubt that your intervention saved a life, and for that, we are all grateful. However, your actions clearly violated hospital policies. Clara maintained her firm stance, though she felt her heart race. I understand, sir. I did what I thought was necessary to save that man. If it means I have to face the consequences, I am prepared. The director sighed and Dr. Marcos intervened. Clara, your dedication to medicine and patient well-being is unquestionable. However, the rules exist to ensure everyone's safety and the proper operation of the hospital. Unfortunately, the board has decided that your disobedience cannot be overlooked. Clara held her breath, feeling the impact of the words that were about to come. The board has determined that despite your noble intentions, you will be terminated from the hospital effective immediately, announced the director, his voice cold and firm. Clara's world seemed to crumble around her. Those words felt like a deep blow, more painful than she had imagined. She had prepared for this possibility, but hearing the final sentence was still devastating. I understand, Clara said, trying to keep her voice steady. I appreciate the opportunity I had here and hope that someday we can find a better balance between rules and humanity. She stood up, feeling everyone's eyes on her. The room was silent, a mix of regret and recognition in the air. Clara walked slowly to the door, each step echoing the magnitude of the decision she had made. Outside, she found Anna waiting for her. The nurse's eyes were filled with tears. Clara, I'm so sorry, Anna said, hugging her tightly. Clara returned the hug, finding momentary comfort in Anna's friendship. I am too, Anna, but I did what needed to be done. As she walked away from the hospital, Clara looked back one last time at the building that had been her second home. The pain of the loss was deep, but the conviction of having followed her heart was stronger. She knew her path in medicine was far from over, and that new opportunities would arise, guided by the same spirit of compassion and courage that had led her to save a life, regardless of the consequences. The unexpected dismissal was just a chapter in her journey, an obstacle that, instead of hindering her progress, would reinforce her determination. And while the future remains uncertain, Clara was ready to face it with the same strength and integrity that had defined her on that crucial night. The days following Clara's dismissal were dark and lonely. Each morning she woke up with a sense of emptiness, the habit of preparing for the hospital still ingrained, but with no destination. Her apartment, once a refuge after long shifts, now felt too large and silent. Clara struggled against sadness and doubt, questioning if she had made the right choice. In an effort to find meaning and purpose, Clara began searching for new opportunities. She sent resumes to smaller clinics, community hospitals, and even NGOs providing medical services in underserved areas. But the shadow of her dismissal and the reason behind it followed her, causing many employers to hesitate in hiring her. Despite the difficulties, Clara did not give up. She used her free time to continue studying, improving her skills and attending seminars and workshops. Her love for medicine was unwavering, and she knew that somehow she would find her way back to the work she loved so much. On a rainy afternoon, while Clara was reviewing medical articles, her phone rang. It was Anna, the loyal friend and nurse who insisted on keeping in touch. "Clara, we need to meet. I have something to tell you," Anna said, her voice excited. Curious and eager to see her friend, Clara agreed, and they met at a cafe near the hospital. Anna arrived with a radiant smile and a sparkle in her eyes. "You won't believe what happened," she began, barely containing her excitement. "Ricardo Albuquerque," Anna continued, "the man you saved is recovering very well. He has been asking a lot about you and was outraged to hear about your dismissal. And there's more. He wants to meet you." Clara was surprised. "He wants to meet me, but why?" "He said he has a proposal for you. It seems he's planning something big and wants you to be a part of it." A few days later, Clara met with Ricardo Albuquerque at his residence. He looked much more recovered and exuded an aura of gratitude and determination. "Dr. Clara," he said, shaking her hand firmly, "there are no words to express my gratitude for you saving my life. But there is something I can do to show how much I appreciate your gesture." Ricardo then revealed his plan. He wanted to open a free clinic in the city center, a place where anyone could receive medical care regardless of their financial situation. And he wanted Clara to lead this project. "You have the passion, the courage, and the competence needed," said Ricardo, "and I have the resources to make this happen. Let's create a place where compassion and medicine meet without barriers." Clara felt a mix of emotions: surprise, joy, and renewed hope. Ricardo's offer was an opportunity to continue doing what she loved, but in an environment where she could follow her principles without fear of reprisals. She accepted the proposal with gratitude, feeling that she had finally found a new purpose. In the months that followed, Clara worked tirelessly alongside Ricardo and a dedicated team to turn the vision into reality. The clinic, named Hope Clinic, became a beacon of hope for many. Clara, now in a leadership role, could apply all her experience and compassion, creating an environment where every patient was treated with dignity and respect. The life after the dismissal, which began so desolately, transformed into a journey of renewal and positive impact. Clara found not only a new path, but a new family in the clinic's team and the patients she served. And while the future still held its mysteries, Clara knew she was exactly where she needed to be, making a difference in the way she had always dreamed. Hope Clinic flourished in the heart of the city, a beacon of compassion and free medical care. Clara, now leading the operation, felt rejuvenated, finding purpose and joy in every life she touched. The team was united, and the patients, once without hope, now had a place where they were welcomed with dignity and quality care. It was a sunny morning when Clara, reviewing patient records, heard a commotion in the hallway. Nurses and patients seemed more excited than usual. When she looked up, she saw a familiar figure entering the clinic's door. It was Ricardo Albuquerque, looking healthier and with a shining expression of gratitude in his eyes. "Dr. Clara," he said, extending his hand, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Clara smiled, surprised and happy to see him again. "Of course, Ricardo, please come in." They headed to Clara's small office, where she offered Ricardo a chair. He sat down, looking a bit emotional but determined. "I know I've thanked you before, but seeing the impact you and this clinic are having on the community fills me with indescribable joy," Ricardo began. "You didn't just save my life, you gave new purpose to my existence." Clara nodded, touched by his words. "I'm very happy to see you recovered and to know that all this was possible thanks to your support. But is there something else you wanted to talk about?" Ricardo smiled. "Yes, there is. Since my recovery, I've been reflecting on what truly matters in life, and I realized that my real desire is to make a lasting difference in people's lives. That's why I'm here." He paused as if pondering the right words. "Clara, I want to expand Hope Clinic. I want to open more units in different parts of the city and eventually in other cities. And I would like you to lead this expansion. Your vision and your heart are exactly what we need to make this dream a reality." Clara was speechless for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the proposal. Expanding the clinic meant reaching even more people, bringing hope and care to thousands who would otherwise go without help. It was an opportunity that could transform many lives. "Ricardo," Clara began, her voice full of emotion, "this is incredible. It would be an honor to lead this expansion. We've seen how the clinic has impacted the community here, and expanding this mission is a dream I never imagined would come true." Ricardo's eyes sparkled. "I knew you would accept. We're already starting the process of raising funds and planning. Your leadership will be crucial, and I want you to have all the resources necessary to make this happen." As Clara and Ricardo discussed the plans, a sense of renewed hope and purpose filled the air. Ricardo's visit wasn't just a surprise, it was a catalyst for an even brighter and more impactful future. Clara felt rejuvenated, ready to face new challenges and make a difference on an even larger scale. The news about the expansion of Hope Clinic quickly spread, bringing a new fervor to the team and the community. Patients, colleagues, and even former adversaries united in support of the vision that Clara and Ricardo shared. It was living proof that acts of courage and compassion can create waves of change far beyond what one might imagine. That afternoon, as Clara walked through the clinic's corridors, she felt overwhelmed by a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. Ricardo Albuquerque's unexpected return not only marked a new chapter in her journey, but also reaffirmed her belief in the transformative power of kindness and determination. And so, with her heart full of hope, Clara prepared to take Hope Clinic's mission to new horizons, knowing that each step she took was shaping a better future for everyone. The expansion of Hope Clinic was in full swing. Clara, now responsible for coordinating the new units, felt energized and full of purpose. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a difference. The community was involved, volunteers were coming forward, and donations were arriving from all sides. Text 1. Quiet morning, Clara received an unexpected call. It was Ricardo Albuquerque, asking to meet her at the main clinic headquarters. His voice seemed laden with something important, something urgent. Clara felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension as she headed to the arranged location. Upon arrival, she was led by a secretary to a conference room where Ricardo was waiting. He was standing next to a middle-aged man, well-dressed, with an imposing presence. Clara immediately recognized him. It was Felipe Mura, a well-known philanthropist and businessman, famous for his generous donations to humanitarian causes. "Clara, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," said Felipe, extending his hand with a warm smile. "I've heard a lot about your extraordinary work here at Hope Clinic." "Thank you, Mr. Mura. It's an honor to have you here," replied Clara, shaking his hand. Ricardo spoke up. "Clara, I brought Felipe here today because he has something very important to share with you. Something that I believe will change everything." Felipe nodded and began to speak. "Clara, your dedication and compassion are truly inspiring. But there's something you don't know about me and Ricardo. Many years ago, before either of us became who we are today, Ricardo and I were business partners. Together, we created a foundation dedicated to humanitarian causes, but for various reasons, we ended up going our separate ways." Clara frowned, intrigued. "And how does this relate to the clinic?" Felipe took a deep breath before continuing. "When I heard about what happened to Ricardo and how you intervened to save his life, I realized that our paths were aligning again in a way I could never have predicted. What you did, Clara, was more than an act of kindness. It was a catalyst for something much bigger." Ricardo intervened, his eyes shining with emotion. "Felipe and I have decided to join forces again, and we want you to be the heart and soul of this new initiative. It's not just about expanding Hope Clinic, but creating a network of clinics and programs that can transform the healthcare system for the underserved across the country." Clara felt the air escape from her lungs. The magnitude of the revelation left her stunned. "You're talking about A revolution in medical care? Felipe smiled. Exactly. And you, Clara, will be the leader of this revolution. We saw in you the same passion and dedication that motivated us years ago. We want you to lead this movement, with all the support and resources we can offer. Felipe's words echoed in Clara's mind. It was a huge responsibility, but also a unique opportunity to make a difference on a scale she had never imagined. She looked at Ricardo, who nodded with an encouraging look. I'm honored, and at the same time scared, Clara admitted. But if it means we can help more people, I'm in. Let's do this. The room erupted in applause and smiles. The grand revelation not only confirmed the positive impact Clara was already making, but also opened doors to a future where her actions could change even more lives. In that moment, Clara realized that her journey was just beginning, and with the help of Ricardo and Felipe, she was ready to lead a new era of compassion and medical care. As the plans unfolded, Clara felt more connected to her mission than ever. The grand revelation was not just about resources and expansion. It was about recognizing the power of one person to initiate monumental change. And so, with renewed determination, Clara embraced her role as a leader, ready to turn the vision into reality and bring hope to every corner of the country. The months following the grand revelation were marked by a whirlwind of activities and preparations. Clara, Ricardo, and Felipe worked tirelessly to realize the vision of a network of accessible and humanitarian clinics. The city was buzzing with the news of the expansion, and Hope Clinic became a symbol of hope and change. One afternoon, while Clara was in a meeting with the planning team, her phone rang. It was Ricardo asking her to come immediately to the hospital where it all began. Something in his voice suggested urgency, but also a hint of excitement. Upon arriving at the hospital, Clara was greeted by the receptionist, who now welcomed her with a warm smile. "Mr. Albuquerque is waiting for you in the meeting room," she said. When Clara entered the room, she found Ricardo and Felipe accompanied by several members of the hospital administration, including the director and Dr. Marcos. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. "Clara, please have a seat," said Ricardo, pointing to a chair beside him. Clara complied, feeling the tension in the air. "What's happening?" Ricardo exchanged a meaningful look with Felipe before starting. "Clara, as you know, this hospital has played a crucial role in our lives. It's here that you showed the world the true meaning of being a doctor. That's why Felipe and I decided it's time to give back." Felipe nodded. "We bought a majority stake in the hospital. As of today, Ricardo and I are the new owners." Clara was stunned. "You bought the hospital?" The hospital director, with a neutral expression, spoke next. "And as the new owners, Ricardo and Felipe have the authority to make changes in the administration. They have something more to share with you." Ricardo smiled. "Clara, we want you to return to where it all began, but this time not just as a doctor. We want you to take over as the head of the hospital." The revelation dropped like a bomb in the room. Clara was stunned, speechless. Head of the hospital?" Felipe laughed. "Yes, Clara. You've shown exceptional leadership and compassion. This hospital needs someone like you to lead. Someone who puts patients first and inspires others by example." Dr. Marcos, who had been silent until then, stood up. "I fully support this decision. Clara, you have always been an inspiration to all of us. I look forward to working under your leadership." Clara felt a wave of emotions. The same institution that had dismissed her was now welcoming her back, not just as a doctor, but as the head. It was an unbelievable turnaround, an opportunity to transform the hospital from within, implementing the changes she had always dreamed of. "I don't know what to say," Clara began, tears in her eyes. "I am honored and moved. I accept this responsibility with the utmost seriousness. I promise to do everything in my power to make this hospital a place of excellence and compassion." The room erupted in applause. Clara felt surrounded by the support and affection of everyone around her. The turnaround in her career was a testament to the fact that integrity, courage, and compassion could indeed change the world. Taking on her new position, Clara began implementing a series of reforms. She focused on humanitarian training, better patient care, and access to health care for everyone, regardless of their financial situation. Under her leadership, the hospital flourished, becoming a model of compassionate care and efficiency. And so Clara, who started as a doctor determined to follow her heart, became a transformative leader, guiding not just a hospital, but inspiring an entire community. Her journey, full of challenges and victories, showed everyone that true medicine goes beyond the walls of the hospital. It is a calling to do good, wherever you are. What would you do in Clara's place? Would you treat Ricardo without regard for the hospital rules, or would you let him die to keep your job? Comment below what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.